Hello, dear listeners. If you are here, it means you are ready to embark on a journey that will allow you to make sense of the complexities of human desires, morality, and the hidden sides of our lives. If you're intrigued by the allure of a story full of intrigue, passion, and moral dilemmas, be sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications. Your support means a great deal to me, and together we will explore the depths of this fascinating narrative. This story will be told by the author herself, and you will be entertained. Okay, look, let's be real for a minute. This story, it's complicated. It's not something I ever thought I'd be telling anyone, let alone a bunch of people on the internet. But here I am, and I guess I just need to get it out. So, here goes. I'm 47, divorced with one kid. Honestly, my life feels like it's on repeat, like a worn-out record. I'm a night shift nurse. You know, the kind of job where you see things that make you question everything. And after a while, you just get used to it. You get used to the weird hours, the constant exhaustion, the stories that would make your hair stand on end. And that means my life outside of work. Well, it's pretty much non-existent. I go to work, I come home, I try to sleep, and then I do it all over again 5 nights a week. It's a routine that's become my life. But there's one thing that keeps me from completely losing it. Darts. Seriously, I know it sounds kind of like something your grandpa does, but I love it. It's my escape. I joined a league last year, just looking for something to do, and I discovered I'm actually pretty decent at it. I mean, I even qualified for a tournament, a real honest-to-goodness tournament 3 hours away. I was so excited. I'd been practicing for months. It was like a little piece of my old pre-divorce life was coming back. But then the reality of my situation hit me like a ton of bricks. Who was going to watch my son? He's a teenager, and he's got, let's just say, a bit of a rebellious streak. He's not exactly the kind of kid you can leave alone for a weekend. Last time I did that, I came home to find out one of his buddies decided to test the structural integrity of my garage with his truck. It wasn't pretty, so I thought, okay, his dad, he'll take him. But of course fate, or maybe just Murphy's Law, had other plans. Guard duty that weekend. Perfect timing, right? So I'm stuck. I can't miss this tournament. I've been working so hard, and I can't leave my son home alone. So I did what any responsible, if slightly exasperated, mother would do. I packed us both up and headed to the hotel. It had an indoor pool. The hotel was a modest one, nestled on the outskirts of a small town called Willow Creek. It wasn't fancy, but it had a certain charm: wood-paneled walls, a cozy lobby with a fireplace, and a faint smell of pine that lingered in the air. My son Sam was quiet on the drive over, his headphones firmly in place, his eyes glued to his phone. I didn't mind the silence. It gave me time to think, to prepare myself for the tournament. We checked in late that evening, the receptionist handing us our keys with a tired smile. The room was small but clean, with 2 double beds and a view of the parking lot. Sam claimed the bed by the window, tossing his bag onto the floor and collapsing onto the mattress without a word. I unpacked slowly, folding my clothes neatly into the dresser, trying to ignore the knot of anxiety in my stomach. The next morning, I woke early, the sunlight streaming through the thin curtains. I stretched and glanced over at Sam. He was still sound asleep, curled up under the covers, his face peaceful in a way it rarely was when he was awake. I shook him gently, and he groaned, rolling over. "I'm going to grab some breakfast," I said. "Do you want to come?" He mumbled something about pancakes, so I knew he was awake. We went down to the hotel restaurant, which was your typical hotel breakfast buffet: rubbery eggs, crispy bacon, and those little mini muffins that are somehow always dry. Sam loaded up his plate with pancakes and syrup, while I opted for a more sensible omelet. We sat there eating in silence, just enjoying the quiet morning. After breakfast, I asked him if there was anything he wanted to do before I had to go back to the dart arena. He perked up immediately. "There's a mall nearby," he said. "They have a GameStop. I've been looking for this game, and they might have it now." I'm not a big fan of malls. They're crowded, noisy, and they always make me feel like I'm spending too much money. But Sam doesn't ask for much. He's a good kid, really. So I agreed. The mall was packed with people, the air buzzing with chatter, and the faint hum of pop music playing over the speakers. Sam led the way, his steps quick and purposeful, heading straight for GameStop. He found the game he was looking for, an old used game that was inexplicably selling for almost $60. I couldn't believe it. I mean, seriously? But he was so excited, and he doesn't ask for things that often. So I just sighed and pulled out my wallet that I paid for the game. And he grinned at me, a genuine, happy grin that made the whole thing worth it. We spent a few more hours wandering around the mall, window shopping and people watching. It was actually kind of nice, spending some quality time with him, just the two of us. It reminded me of when he was little, before the teenage angst kicked in. That night, when I went back to the dart arena, I felt good. I was rested, I'd spent some time with Sam, and I was ready to play my best. But as it turns out, I play better when I'm tired and stressed. I went from second place all the way down to fifth. It was frustrating, but I tried to stay positive. One of the women I play with back home, Maria, actually won the tournament. I was so happy for her. She's been working hard, and she deserved it. After the awards ceremony, a bunch of us decided to go out and celebrate. They invited me, and I told them I'd come as long as I didn't have to drive. The bar we went to was just across the street from the hotel, which was perfect. I mean, who wants to drive after a night of celebrating? We ordered drinks, and I decided to indulge a little. I'm not a big drinker, but I do enjoy a glass of wine now and then. And well, let's just say I had more than a glass. We laughed, we talked, we celebrated Maria's win. It was a good time. I think I finally stumbled back to the hotel around 1 a.m. I was a little tipsy, but I was also happy and relaxed. I opened the door to our room, and Sam was asleep in his bed, the TV still on. I smiled, thinking about how peaceful he looked. I went to the bathroom, changed into my pajamas, and came back to get into bed. The room wasn't really spinning, but it felt like it. I lay my head down on the pillow, pulled the covers up, and tried to focus on the movie that was playing on TV. But for some reason, I couldn't fall asleep. I was just lying there, thinking about the tournament, about Sam, about life in general. It was around 3 a.m. when I heard Sam moving in his bed. I peeked over at him, and I could see his blanket moving up and down. My first thought was, is he? I mean, it's a natural thought for any parent, right? Especially with a teenage son. He was moving slowly, trying to be quiet, probably thinking I was asleep. The longer I watched, the more intrigued I became. I know it sounds weird, but it's the truth. I started to feel this strange sense of arousal. I was thinking, this is so wrong, but I couldn't help it. I was getting turned on, knowing what he was doing just a few feet away from me. It was a forbidden feeling, a taboo, and it was intoxicating. After about 10 minutes, let's just say I was feeling things I hadn't felt in a long time. I kept wondering, is he ever going to? I guess it was the wine, or maybe just the loneliness, but I couldn't take it anymore. I blurted out, "Do you need any help with that?" I was thinking if he said no, I could just pretend I was talking in my sleep. But to my surprise, he said, "Yes." And that's when it hit me. What am I going to do now? That single word, yes, hung in the air, a stark, undeniable truth. It was like a switch had been flipped, a barrier broken. The what-ifs and the should-haves faded away, replaced by a strange sense of inevitability. I stood up, my legs feeling strangely numb, and walked toward his bed. The room was bathed in the soft glow of the TV, casting long, distorted shadows that danced across the walls. I stopped at the edge of his bed, my heart pounding in my chest, a frantic drumbeat against the silence. I could feel the heat radiating from his body, a palpable warmth that drew me closer. I hesitated for a moment, my hand hovering over the edge of the blanket, a silent question hanging in the air. Then slowly, deliberately, I reached out and pulled the covers down just enough to reveal him. He lay there, his eyes wide, a mixture of surprise and something else, something I couldn't quite decipher. His hand was still wrapped around himself, a silent testament to the act I had interrupted. I stood there for a moment, just looking at him, trying to process what was happening. It was like looking at a stranger, a version of my son I had never seen before. It was a strange mix of familiarity and unfamiliarity, a blurring of the lines between mother and something else. I felt a pull, an almost irresistible urge to touch him. I reached out, my fingers trembling slightly, and gently took his hand away. His skin was warm, slightly damp, the sensation sending a shiver down my spine. "Here," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "Let me help you with that." The room was silent except for the faint hum of the TV and the sound of our breathing, shallow, uneven, and charged with something neither of us could name. My hand moved slowly, deliberately, tracing the contours of his body with a tenderness that surprised me. It was as if I were discovering him for the first time, not as my son, but as someone entirely new. His breath hitched, and I felt him tense beneath my touch. I looked up, meeting his eyes, and saw a flicker of uncertainty there. But it was fleeting, replaced by something darker, more primal. He didn't pull away. Instead, he leaned into it, his body responding to the forbidden intimacy that I lowered my head, my lips brushing against his skin, and felt him shudder. The taste of him was unfamiliar yet intoxicating, a mix of salt and warmth that sent a jolt of electricity through me. My mind raced with conflicting thoughts. This is wrong. This is so wrong. But my body betrayed me, moving of its own accord, driven by a need I hadn't realized was there. When it was over, we lay there in silence, the weight of what we'd done pressing down on us like a heavy blanket. I turned to him, my voice barely a whisper. "We can't make a habit of this," I said, though even as the words left my mouth, I knew they were a lie. He nodded, his eyes avoiding mine, but the air between us was thick with unspoken promises. The next morning, I woke to the sound of Sam shuffling around the room. I kept my eyes closed, pretending to be asleep, as I listened to him gather his things. The events of the night before played on a loop in my mind, each memory more vivid than the last. When I finally opened my eyes, he was sitting on the edge of his bed, staring at the floor. "Sam," I said softly, and he looked up, his expression unreadable. "Yeah? Are you okay?" He hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, I'm fine." But the tension in his voice told me otherwise. I wanted to say more to reassure him, but the words caught in my throat. Instead, I got up and started packing my things, the silence between us heavy and suffocating. The drive home was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels like it's alive, pulsing with unspoken thoughts and emotions. Sam sat in the passenger seat, his headphones on, but I could tell he wasn't listening to anything. His gaze was fixed on the passing landscape, his mind clearly elsewhere. That I wanted to talk to him, to ask him how he was feeling, but every time I opened my mouth, the words died before they could form. What could I say? "I'm sorry. This was a mistake." Both felt inadequate, hollow. Instead, I focused on the road, my hands gripping the steering wheel tightly. The weight of what we'd done hung between us, a secret that neither of us knew how to carry. Back home, life resumed its usual rhythm. I went back to work, and Sam went back to school, but the normalcy felt like a facade, a thin veneer over something much darker and more complicated. At night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing with thoughts of Sam. The guilt was there, of course, but it was overshadowed by something else, a strange, almost addictive sense of power and desire. I told myself it was a one-time thing, a moment of weakness, but deep down, I knew it wasn't true. That it happened again a week later. I came home from work late, exhausted and drained, and found Sam sitting on the couch, the TV on but his attention elsewhere. He looked up when I walked in, and our eyes met. Neither of us said a word, but the tension in the room was palpable. I crossed the room slowly, my heart pounding in my chest, and sat down beside him. This time, there was no hesitation. He reached for me, his hands trembling slightly, and I let him pull me closer. The kiss was tentative at first, but it quickly deepened, fueled by a need that neither of us could deny. After that, it became a pattern. We didn't talk about it, didn't acknowledge it, but it was always there, lurking beneath the surface. The guilt was still there, but it was drowned out by the overwhelming surge of desire. That I started to think about other things, other possibilities. What if we did this again but somewhere else? What if we pushed the boundaries even further? The thoughts were intoxicating, dangerous, and I couldn't stop myself from indulging in them. But as the weeks turned into months, the consequences began to weigh on me. I started to notice the way Sam looked at me, not with love or affection, but with something darker, more possessive. It scared me, but it also excited me. And that scared me even more that I knew I had to put an end to it. But every time I tried, I found myself drawn back to him, unable to resist the pull of our forbidden connection. One night, after a particularly intense encounter, I finally broke down. "We can't keep doing this," I said, my voice trembling. Sam looked at me, his expression unreadable. "Why not?" "Because it's wrong," I said, though even as the words left my mouth, I knew they were a lie. That he didn't say anything, just reached for me again. And I let him. In the end, it was Sam who ended it. He came to me one night, his expression serious, and said, "We need to stop." I nodded, tears streaming down my face, and he pulled me into a hug. It was the first time in months that we'd touched without it leading to something more, and it felt different. After that, things slowly returned to normal. We didn't talk about what had happened, but it was always there. A secret that bound us together in ways neither of us could fully understand. That I still think about it sometimes, late at night when I can't sleep. The guilt is still there, but it's overshadowed by something else, a strange, almost unsettling sense of gratitude. Because in the end, it taught me something about myself, about love, about desire. And while I know it was wrong, I can't bring myself to regret it. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the complexities of desire, morality, and self-discovery. Sarah's story is a testament to the power of human connection and the importance of staying true to oneself. If you enjoyed this story and want to explore more tales of passion and intrigue, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Turn on notifications so you never miss an episode, and let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Your support and feedback are what make this adventure possible.